Whew, alright, we just watched episode 4 of Agatha All Along. And I don't remember what it's called because they all have really long names, like that one religious show from Arrested Development, like And So It Is, and also It Is Unto You, or whatever it's called. What was this one? It was like, it's called If I Can't Reach You, Let My Song Teach You. Okay, that makes sense. I think, for sure, best episode of the series so far. In terms of being an episode of television, like telling a story, focusing on a character, which is what I wanted last week, which, like, yes, last week was kind of the Sashir Zamata episode, but we were introducing a lot of concepts, and it was going to be Miss Hart's final episode, so she got a lot of the spotlight. And I feel like we've got more in store for Sashir Zamata, partially just because Jennifer Kale is the most significant witch in this show, outside of Agatha and Teen, whoever that could be. But like Jennifer Kale has been on the Midnight Suns, she's been all over the comics. And Sashir Zamata is third build on this show, I believe, even though there's a bunch of like end and withs at the end of the credits. But episode 4, The 70s Room, the star of the show, again, is the production design. The camera work, the set design, the costumes, all of it was perfect. We had so many fun like crash zooms. There was even a split diopter shot, which you only see usually highlighted on Twitter when people are like, ooh, it's a split diopter shot. So I'm sure that'll be on Twitter tomorrow. On the musical episode, which I like, it was the same song, although a little bit tweaked. And I think it does seem like that might just be the song. Like, part of me was wondering, are we going to get a song per episode? But it seems like, if anything, every episode that has a song is going to have a stylized version of that song. Because even the first episode had the Mayor of Easttown opening that was the, like, you know, prestige television intro version of that song. But you know, it's fine. It's a little earworm. I'm sure it'll be one that we're all like remembering in our heads way too much, and that's just how these go. So right off the bat, I think we've learned a new fun like axiom of storytelling. This one is, if you want people to be invested in your show, put Aubrey Plaza in it, then take Aubrey Plaza away, and then put Aubrey Plaza back in the show. That really is everybody go, oh, the show's good now. And I do think it just makes a better show, especially because of the new dynamics that Rio is bringing into the group, which we'll talk about who she probably is and what's going on with her, because I do think if you understand the possibilities of who she could be, I think a lot of the things she's doing in this episode make a lot of sense. And if you don't, I think it still makes sense. Like, I think it's still pretty clear what her deal is, but I think it's a little bit more mysterious. But I do like all the friction and tension within the group, especially mostly with Agatha and whoever she's talking to at that moment, because nobody really gets along. I also think it's funny how immediately all the witches are like attracted to Aubrey Plaza. Again, she's just, you know, she's very good in this role and it's working. And I know that because I saw Megalopolis, and I know what Aubrey Plaza can look like in a thing that is not working. Although she was, you know, easily the most interesting part. She's the Green Witch, and she does the evil voice, I'm the Green Witch, so that's fun. I mean, I think the biggest thing that people are going to come away from this episode with is that Agatha and Rio are in a relationship, or were in a relationship or something, and Marvel is being slightly more explicit than usual, although still not technically as explicit as you would hope. I think they maybe will kiss at some point. I mean, and to be fair, this does not seem like a, oh, they're not kissing because Disney doesn't want to go all the way with this. It feels like this story is setting up this tension where they really want to kiss, but Agatha specifically does not want to. Or maybe Rio doesn't want to. I mean, they both seem to not want to. And we'll do a little bit of like guessing at who they are at the end of the video. But also this episode really focused on Alice and her whole thing. Like, I feel like we got her whole arc wrapped up. So like, that was good. This is what I've wanted from these and what I was hoping the rooms would be. Very focused on an individual witch, their history, some sort of like a really concise story that we could tell about them, and then they can grow through this challenge and then come out the other side better. Also, assuming a single individual is behind this, it's cool that they're looking at everybody in the masks with like the little eyes. That's cool and scary. It's good. I do say one thing about this show, and I don't think they've gone for it yet, and maybe they will next week. It still hasn't been scary. It's been a little bit like, oh, I guess this is scary. And again, this is a show for everybody, so children included. But I do wish it was like a tad scarier. And I don't know what that would need. Like I said that last week, I can't fully put my finger on what this is missing. But there's definitely versions of a show like this where I could feel like scared. And I am a wimp when it comes to horror movies. So this is not the kind of thing that like I'm so dull to it. It just feels like it's a little softer maybe than it needs to be. I think we could do one genuine scare per episode. I will say, like, spoilers for the episode, I did really like the idea that the song is a spell that the mom created to protect Alice. And the point of the spell is it's going to protect her. As long as the song is popular and catchy, everybody will be singing it. So it will be constantly going, like, protecting her from her curse. I think that's clever. We suggested something else as a way to potentially deal with Beetlejuice, is to make a hit song called Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice that everybody's singing. That way Beetlejuice is constantly being summoned, snapping between different locations, never has time to cause any real trouble. Who knows, maybe they'll do it in the third one. I do think the aesthetic here was fun. I think all the looks were fun. I like that Agatha's shiny pants. I also think this episode had a good amount of humor. The bit where Agatha was like, Jennifer, go play the bass, and Jennifer's like, I am in the circle though. That was cute. I think the demon looked cool. I remember having that reaction to actually seeing it, because part of me was like, oh, is it just gonna flap around? We're gonna hear it, we're gonna assume that's what's going on, but we're not gonna be able to actually like visualize that. And part of it maybe because of budget, or maybe they just don't want it to be too scary, but we saw it and it looked pretty cool. It had like a very specific look, and then it burst into flames. So that was good. That is what I'm looking for. Oh, one thing that I noticed, and this has to be what this is going for, right? We did, and people on Twitter mentioned this, we did see the first version of a Lilia call forward that paid off, right? So she says this in the episode. She says, hey, I didn't like you girls originally, but now, and there's a pause. She kind of zones out, and then she's back, and she kind of forgot what happened. That is definitely a connection to that time when she had the humongous lips in that other house where she said, I love you guys. And it like didn't really make sense then and makes sense now. That being said, I haven't really been keeping track of other things she said. Her little asides just seem to be pulling a character and going, you're gonna die, but then that's it, and that doesn't go anywhere. I do think we got a specific one this week. She said the Three of Swords, which is a tarot card, which makes sense because this character is some sort of, you know, psychic or divinations, which I think is how she describes it. And it seems like maybe her test will have something to do with recalling information or like getting all of your information together. So like that will be something secret where they have to pick things, and it's like, oh, I just don't know. And everybody's like, oh wait, remember that thing you said yesterday? That's what that was. I think that could come together really nicely as the show goes on, stitching together all of the Lilia like lucidity, kind of getting all of her thoughts together in chronological order. That's kind of fun. I do like Pat the Pun to this. Really funny. I loved how she was playing all the different instruments. I think she had like 4 different. She definitely had those little things. And then at one point, I think she had a tambourine and the maracas. That little image where she was playing maracas. She's having fun. That's the thing about this show and all these Marvel shows in general. Like Patty LuPone, she could phone it in if she wanted to, but she's like hamming it up, having some fun. Good. I do think it's funny that Rio, without going into what this character is, just wants to kill everybody. And kind of like Crompopulous Michael, it's just like, oh, I just can't wait to start killing everybody. Could that be a clue to her true identity? Maybe. I guess we could talk about the teen at least. Teen is not her son, assuming that Rio is telling the truth, which seems like she is. It's not Agatha's son. So that's important. That seems like good information, because that was the only other thing that people thought they could be besides potentially Wanda's kid reincarnated. That seems like a pretty solid answer to that question now. And I don't think that the show has like, oh, they really gave it away too early, because I don't think the show expects this to be a mystery the same way that like Westworld is a mystery. It's like, if you don't know who this character is, you know, you figure it out over time. And if you do, it's pretty obvious, but you still enjoy it. What else is fun in this episode? I did think this arrangement of the song is catchy. It's a fun song. I like that Agatha tried to do that thing where you trick the villain into saying they're playing over a hot mic, and the villain didn't care, but I like that she tried. It's a classic move. I'm curious about Jennifer's backstory though, and I imagine we'll get that in 2 or 3 episodes, but like, they stole her magic without magic somehow. So that's interesting. I don't know what character that could be, unless that character is, and we kind of saw that guy for a second, because we don't know where, if at all, Agatha's kid's walking around somewhere. This Nicholas Scratch character that she definitely sacrificed or something. Is that character out there causing trouble for all the other witches? Like, is he a bad guy like he usually is in the comics? Maybe that's who that is. I don't know. And the other thing that's interesting, we have not seen 2 names. Like there's 2 names on the credits that have not been filled in. I don't think in any episode. If it has, then we'll cut this part out. But I think this is true. The bit where you can see all of Westview in the hex, whoever that is hasn't shown up yet. Every title card at the end does represent the character in a way that's like, oh, right, that's who he is. So I wonder what that means. Is that Wanda? Like, if that's Elizabeth Olsen, I think she's too significant to just be treated like another member of that cast. Like, she would be an and card at the end. But it seems like this has something to do with Westview specifically. Then the one after that is some ancient witch text. Like, I imagine we will see Nicholas Scratch at some point, and maybe he's like that little text. But then, yeah, who's this other one? Who are we missing? Because it does feel like we've gotten the squad together now, and maybe there will be like a person at the end of the road, because I've heard the road described very much like the yellow brick road from Wizard of Oz. I saw a good post about that by Patty Whacked 777 on Reddit today. about how this all lines up to kind of what's going on in The Wizard of Oz, which I did say back when I was doing WandaVision breakdowns, that Wizard of Oz symbolism was very present in that as well, so that makes sense. But it feels like there will have to be a wizard or something, some guy who's just there at the end like, hey, you won the road. I imagine that would be Mephisto, because I do think we're going to see him in this show. That would be cool. And, you know, he doesn't have to be, he could just be the actor in like a slick little suit and stuff. Doesn't have to be a full, like, big red man. But I'd be curious to see who else shows up. It could also be like Darcy, only because in the comics, Darcy has been like upgraded from just random player in a Thor movie to getting this role in the WandaVision show. And then in the comics, now she's like Wanda's assistant at like a magic shop. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she becomes like, I don't know, Jennifer Kale's assistant at the end of the show. And then she kind of fills that role. I don't know, that's just a dumb idea. But the fact that it's like a Westview hex symbol makes me think that it's probably a character we saw in WandaVision, and Monica Rambeau's in a different dimension. Wanda's dead, Vision's, you know, whatever. And Vision doesn't really care about Agatha. Like, the witchy side of things is more. So I don't know. You know what? This part's weird. I do appreciate the dynamic between Agatha and Rio. Like, I like how playful Rio is. I think it's funny because Aubrey Plaza's whole thing, and we talked about this during the Megalopolis episode of the podcast, is like, her bit was always she makes you feel uncomfortable. That was what was funny about April. She would say something and like Parks and Rec, it would be so weird. All the other characters would be like, oh. And I think she's doing that now, but she's doing that in like a, you know, sexy uncomfortable. Like, she's taking characters by surprise, catching them off guard with that. And I think that works. I like the way Catherine Hahn's playing it. I like that she's doing her big Agatha voice and then, you know, kind of breaking it down for like smaller moments that are just basically Catherine Hahn. And I do think we got a good explanation of like all the stuff this week, how curses work, how sigils work, what being bound could be. Like, originally it felt like the rules of witch stuff were going to be pretty vague, but now it feels like there is a logic that can use to organize things in the future. So like, things will be revealed, like Teen's name will be revealed when Teen something, like, we'll know what's happening there because of how it's set up. All right, let's talk about Rio. So there were two characters that people thought Rio was, and this is kind of spoilery, but I'm not going to say anything besides things that are speculative at this point, things that are in the text, not looking at like any other, say, leaked information that could come from, you know, toys or something. People thought Rio was one of two characters: Blackheart, the son of Mephisto, or Avatar of Death, one of the cosmic entities of the Marvel Comics universe. It seems now like she's Death. Like, that is in a subtle way, not in the Blackheart way where she says the word Blackheart. Like, that's why Agatha was telling her no when Billy was about to die. She was saying, I didn't know you'd kill Mrs. Hart. When she killed Mrs. Hart, like, that was Agatha talking to her. Billy's like, who is that? That's that moment. Like, she was pretty clear, like, she's gonna kill everybody like Roberto from Futurama and just stab them all. And I think what we could get, this Death could be less of a cosmic entity like a Galactus and more of a fusion of like Blackheart and Death, in the sense that she is a figure, like, she occupies the same level as Mephisto in terms of like power and importance and stuff like that. And I'm like, the way I'm reading what she does, because it seems like her job, the way she describes it, is she had to do something, which was kill a kid, probably Agatha's kid, which she didn't want to do. Agatha and her kid, maybe, like, Agatha made a deal behind her back and forced her to kill the kid. Very dramatic, which means she's kind of the Grim Reaper, which would suggest she kind of works the same way Death works in the Sandman universe, where it's just like, your job is to go around and ferry people to the underworld. It doesn't seem like she has to actively do that, but it does seem like in big moments you summon Death and then she has to go do something. I wonder if she is the Grim Reaper and in this universe she is still Mephisto's kid. Like, Mephisto had a child whose job it was to do the Grim Reaper stuff. Also, in case anybody's curious, there is a character in Marvel Comics named the Grim Reaper. That is not who we're talking about. In the comics, Grim Reaper is the brother of Wonder Man, Simon Williams, I can't remember, it's something Williams. Then he has a lot of connections to Vision, and I expect we'll see him in the Wonder Man show because he's Simon's brother, but he's just a guy with a robot arm, and sometimes he gets brought back from the dead, but like, he's not like a supernatural force. So what I'm reading is Agatha traded the kid's life for the book. Rio had to kill the kid. She was very upset about that, and then, you know, that makes sense. It's why they can't have this relationship, because they hate each other so much, but they're super into each other because one of them is Aubrey Plaza and one of them is Catherine Hahn, and who can blame either of them? I do like this idea that Agatha was protecting Billy because she thought Billy was her son or was some reborn version of her son. And maybe he still is. Like, maybe, like she says, he's not your son. But like in the comics, Agatha does not serve this purpose with Billy. She is a witch. Honestly, most of what she does when it comes to raising children, she is the babysitter for the Fantastic Four's kids. That's one of her more prominent roles in the comics. Like, I could see a world where in this universe, because Wanda is dead, Agatha becomes good. She like learns all the lessons on the road and then takes in Billy as her surrogate son, even though he is very clearly Wanda's reincarnated son. Yeah, I don't know. I really think this 4th episode was good though. I think this is the best episode of the show, and I think this trajectory we're on is upward. Because we had a very simple little escape room. Now we have a way more complicated escape room, very focused on one character, focused on its very specific aesthetic that we can use to have fun with the production design, and they do that so well. So as you spend more time with these characters, learn more about their backstory, kind of start to like some of them, maybe start to hate some of them, and the witch rooms get more complicated, that I think will mean it's going to get better as the show goes on. And I think we've seen the viewership for this has been very good, and it has been very cheap. Like it doesn't look cheap. It looks very expensive, but because of, I guess, like a really specific way they shot this and not having to do a bazillion reshoots and not needing to do a lot of stuff afterwards with CGI. Honestly, it looks like very little CGI, if any, is actually happening here. Like most of this seems like it's happening, like the fire effects, for instance, look like actual fire things, like fire effects in reality. And even when the big monster thing has fire behind it, like that's something you could do in real life. They could animate it, but it might look weird, and also it's expensive. So I think the way they produce this show is very smart. And if this is a sign of things to come, and maybe Daredevil and maybe Ironheart, although Ironheart does seem to have been like fully shot already. But if Disney is able to learn these lessons, make the show inexpensively, not in a way that looks cheap, but in a way that is efficient and is able to reach a solid audience, that's like a recipe for success, and I love that. So overall, episode 4, favorite episode so far. I think it bodes well for the series. That's all I got. Stay safe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff, Nando V Movies. And I'll see you next time. Bye.